Good evening, everyone. I don't know if you can all hear me. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Can hear you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel Akinwale, and I'll be anchoring to this session. You are all welcome to week 7 of the JIPCC mentorship program. JIPCC mentorship program is the Juliana Imam Intellectual Property and Creative Consult. It's a quarterly intellectual property mentorship program for law students, young lawyers, intellectual property enthusiasts across Africa. Mentees are afforded the opportunity to access valuable intellectual property advice, training, network mentorship, internship, discussion forums, industry updates, and resource materials from experienced IP mentors. The program seeks to encourage continuous intellectual property training, development, and evolution in Nigeria, Africa, and around the world. Of course, we can follow the institute across all social media platforms with the hashtag, we see JIPCC MIP. And of course, you can also watch our videos on YouTube and Facebook. Now, I'll quickly run through the objectives of the program. The objectives of the program are: 1, to provide easy access to intellectual property guidance, training, and resource materials for students, young lawyers, and IP enthusiasts in Africa. 2, to facilitate dialogue, network among experienced and less experienced intellectual property practitioners and stakeholders. 3, to transform mentees into intellectual property mentors and leaders for the next generation of mentees. And finally, to facilitate further intellectual property mentorship, internship, scholarship, and IP-related job placement for mentees. I'll quickly run through a quick announcement. Recently, there is a very, very new and awesome development, which is the 30 minutes one-on-one mentorship with our favorite JIPCC mentor. It's for the mentees and for all of us who are mentees and who want to learn, even for past mentees and current mentees. We can join by clicking on the link. BIT, the link I think will be displayed on the screen. Of course, there are so many benefits that comes with the mentorship session. And we know that as you log in and join, you will definitely gain a whole lot in intellectual property. I would quickly run through the profile of our mentors. I can tell you that today's session is going to be interesting, intriguing, exciting. So you are in for a ride. And for me, I'm enthralled because I'm actually looking forward to hearing from the mentors. So we have Professor Rama. Professor Rama is served as Director of WIPO Coordination Office in New York. He had been WIPO's representative till the beginning of 2014 at the UN headquarters in New York. Currently, he is holding the GNLU Microsoft Chair. Wow, we are lucky, we are privileged to have Professor Rama in our midst. Professor Rama worked with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of India for nearly 25 years and became its chief legal advisor. He was also the legal advisor at the Permanent Mission of India to the United Nations in New York from 1995 to 1998. Earlier, he was a full-time professor at the Advanced Legal Studies Department of the University of Madras from 1977 to 1982 and lectured at several universities in the United States of America. He was an adjunct professor at Columbia University and Pace University Law School, New York. He was also a visiting faculty member of the Indian Academy for Diplomacy and International Law, Indian Foreign Service Institute, executive member of the Indian Society of International Law, member of SAARC Arbitration Council, member of the editorial board of Indian Journal of International Law and the Indian Yearbook of International Affairs, and is an active member of the International Law Association in Indian branch. He's enrolled as a member of the bar at Delhi High Court and has several publications to his credit. He has been the director of intellectual property and technology boards globally. We are grateful to have you, Professor Rama, in our midst. I'll be reading the next profile. We have Mr. Folari Aluco. Mr. Folari Aluco is a legal practitioner and partner in Truman Rockwood Solicitors. He's a director at the Intellectual Property Institute, Nigeria. Mr. Folari is a past chairman of the Nigeria Bar Association Abuja branch. He's a thought leader on innovation, intellectual property, and entertainment law in Nigeria. I've also been under several mentorship sessions under Professor Mr. Folari Aluco, and I tell you, he's an exciting speaker, and we are going to learn a lot from him. Then we have Umbach Kalu. Umbach Kalu has over 15 years experience implementing international development programs in geographical indications, international trade and investment, trade policy research, policy reform, market access, monitoring and evaluation, capacity building, market linkage, and value chains. Sand's experience is cross-cutting in a complex cultural environment, applying multidimensional techniques, the entrepreneurial capability to deliver results. He's a lead technical consultant on African intellectual property and innovation projects, an EU/IPPO founded and funded program supporting the Nigerian government to create enabling environment to protect and promote geographical indications in Nigeria. Sand is also leading the national research project funded by the French Development Agency to identify potential geographical indications products in Nigeria. He is the current executive director of African International Trade and Commerce Research and international trade firm for the African markets. Over the years, Sand and his team have been working on promoting and creating awareness of GIS in Nigeria. Some of the programs on GIS that has been implemented in Nigeria is the National Sustainable Development of Nigeria Geographical Indications, Stakeholder Engagement 2017, and the second edition of the Nigerian Geographical Indication Stakeholder Dialogue 2018, which was themed Making Nigeria GI Global, including the most recent event that was jointly hosted a webinar series with World Intellectual Property Organization on the importance of geographical indications to the sustainable development of Nigeria. Sand is a current PhD student with the University of Cape Town, South Africa. He holds a master's degree in MS in Business and Management from the University of Portsmouth, UK, and a BA in International Trade from the University of Portsmouth, UK. He has a certificate in trade negotiations in an era of uncertainty from European University Institute, Italy, and many other professional capacity development certificates from the World Trade Organization, from UNCTAD, and many other reputable institutions. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Sand. We are looking forward to hearing from you. We'll proceed quickly to our mentees. We are sure we are ready to listen to you. I'll quickly call on, I hope we are all ready for us to learn from you. So I'll quickly call on group 3, the leader of group 3, to make a presentation. Please, you have just 6 minutes. I would advise that you just you work within the time allotted to you. Thank you. You have the floor, group 3.
Thank you very much. Hello, good afternoon. This is group 3's presentation. While we wait for Olamide to share the slides, I'll be going straight to the introduction to explain what we're going to be doing. So basically, group 3 is talking about geographical indications. So as we're waiting for Olamide to share the slides, I'll start taking us through the presentation. So one might wonder why champagne is not produced in Nigeria, argan oil is not manufactured in China, or even tequila not manufactured in the United States of America. Under international intellectual property regimes, it is unlawful to produce these peculiar products in other regions, aside the regions in which they are originally made. So these products, like I said earlier, cannot be produced in any other country except that particular country that has geographical indication for the products. Despite recent legal formalization, geographical indications date back to the 4th century BC. That is, people have been protecting particular products based on where they come from, based on where they came from, even before we started legalizing geographical indications. The act of requesting for products based on their place of origin was usual among the ancient Mediterranean people, that is the Greeks and the Romans. Because of our time, the products coming from certain places has peculiar qualities. As Olamide started sharing the slides.
No. You can continue with your presentation. Thank you.
You're muted.
Please unmute yourself. You're muted.
Okay. We'll go straight to the definition of geographical indications. The World Intellectual Property Organization has defined a geographical indication, that is a GI. I will be using GI in the course of this presentation, as a sign used on products that have a specific geographical origin and possess qualities or a reputation that are due to their origin. So let me use something more local to Nigeria. There's this particular rice known as ofada rice, right? And in Nigeria, it is largely produced in Ogun State. So in a way, this product has geographical indication from Ogun State. I want to use something that we all know to really understand what we're talking about. Geographical indications are typically used for agricultural products, foodstuffs, wine and spirit drinks, handcrafts and industrial products. So I'd like us to look at the image below. I don't know if you can see it, but then we have a classification of specific products that are peculiar to geopolitical zones in Nigeria. For example, the Southeast, we have cassava, yam, cocoa, palm oil, rice, and vegetables. So we'll go straight to examples of geographical indications. We have Scotch whiskey from Scotland, Havana tobacco from Cuba, Thai silk from Thailand, Bohemian crystal from Czech Republic, Swiss watches from Switzerland. So these particular products are peculiar to those particular regions. Like I said, for example, argan oil is particular to Morocco. We don't really have manufacturing of argan oil in Nigeria. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Then we move straight to protection for geographical indication. That is the four main ways which you can protect geographical indications. So the first one is the sui generis system. Sui generis is a Latin expression that translates into of its own kind. It refers to anything that is peculiar to itself or of its own class. We're talking about peculiarity. The sui generis method will provide legal protection for signs and characteristics associated with a product, such as a specific logo or shape. So in this instance, a specific logo or shape is being used to protect those particular products. This is one of the ways which you can protect geographical indications. There are four major ways we'll be looking at by including them in these related product specifications. So we move straight to the next one, using collective or certification marks. You can use collective marks through registration, which may only be used by members of an association. So for example, let's say we have members of a particular association that produce, let's say, champagne. Now, if you want to protect that particular geographic indication, you can register it as a collective mark. So anybody that is not a part of that association cannot produce that product. I don't know if you understand. And the other way is registering it as certification marks, which may be used by anyone who complies with the requirements defined by the owner of the mark. So for example, if champagne is local to a particular area, I keep using champagne, but if it's local to a particular area and it is protected through the certification marks, right? Any person that complies with the particular standard of the creation of that product can be allowed to produce it. Then number three, we go straight to geographical indications can also be protected through unfair competition laws. Now, I'll quickly explain what that means. Unfair competition laws do not create an industrial property rights over the geographical unfair competition laws do not create an industrial property rights over the GI. They indirectly protect GI so far as the prohibits acts that may involve their unauthorized use. So basically, unfair competition laws, they do not give the people particular industrial rights, but they keep other people from actually using it in a way that they are not authorized. So if I'm not authorized to produce a particular product, right, it can be protected through geographic indication. Then we go straight to the other method, which is methods focusing on business practices, including administrative product and approval schemes. Then next slide, legal framework for GIs. So we have the international conventions and treaties. This includes the TRIPS agreements. The TRIPS agreement is the agreement on trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights. It is an international legal agreement between all the members of the World Trade Organization. So if you are a member of the World Trade Organization and you are party to that particular TRIPS and agreement, you must protect geographical indications. You have a right to recognize it and protect it. Geographical, okay, we'll go straight to the next slide. The difference between geographical indications and trademarks. Now, I'll quickly read it through. Trademarks are trade signals and identifiers of product source and expressions such as Coca-Cola, Marlboro, and others. All of these marks distinguish products or services and all their producers, manufacturers, or providers in the marketplace. We've been doing trademarks for a while, so I'm sure we all know what trademarks are. So we'll quickly go straight to the major difference between trademarks and geographical indications. So trademarks are freely transferable, while geographical indications are not freely transferable. That is the main difference between both of them. I'll read what geographical indication means again so we can see the difference. Geographical indications are signs which are particular to a peculiar origin, or products which are particular to a peculiar origin. So we go straight to geographical indication protection in Nigeria. Next slide, please. Geographical indication protection in Nigeria. So the first one is through the World Trade Organization, that is by the TRIPS agreement. World Trade Organization members, including Nigeria, under the TRIPS agreement must recognize and protect GIs as IP rights. Like I said earlier, if you're a party to that agreement, you must recognize and protect geographical indications as intellectual property rights. Also, we will now move straight to local legislations, that is Nigeria. The TRIPS agreement is international, then we move to local legislations. The only relevant protection in local legislation is found in the Trademark Act. The Act recognizes certification marks and does not explicitly provide for geographical indications. So here we are seeing loopholes in our laws. That is, the Trademark Act provides for certification marks, but it doesn't provide for geographical indications. Then we move to the rights a GI provides. Next slide, please. A geographical indication right enables those who have the rights to use the indication to prevent its use by a third party. For example, in the jurisdiction where a particular tea is produced, the producers of the tea can exclude others from growing teas that are not produced in their tea gardens, or they do not follow the particular standard which these producers have set down. However, a protected geographical indication does not enable the holder to prevent someone from making the product using the same techniques as set out in the standard for that indication. So what this is saying is, if a particular product is privy to a jurisdiction, it doesn't prevent the people that hold it. It doesn't allow the people that hold it to prevent other people from following those particular steps in creating the products. I hope you understand that. Next slide, please. So we move to how long a geographical indication protection lasts. In many sui generis legislations, that is of its own kind legislations, registration for geographical indications are not subject to a specific period of validity. That is, there's no specific period of validity, there's no time frame stipulated in many sui generis legislations. Next slide, please. So I will just read out the need for protection of geographical indications. So let us listen. Geographical indications aid in product differentiation, which are useful to consumers as they pay increasing attention to the geographical origin of products and care about specific characteristics present in the products they buy. In many cases, the place of origin suggests to consumers that the product will have a particular quality or characteristics they may value. GI also contributes to the social and economic development of rural areas. The entitlement to use a geographical indication generally lies within the local producers and the added value generated by it. In addition, they may bring value to regions, not only in terms of job and iron income, but also promoting the region as a whole. So if we have a particular product that is privy to a region, right, you know that this region is known for this product. So it brings more promotion for the region and therefore increases income. Next slide, please. Then this just talks about how Nigeria is enriched with agricultural benefits and how if we actually have laws that protect this particular product that we have. For example, ofada rice that I explained earlier, if we have laws that protect these things, it can actually promote our country further and then put these regions out there and increase income in the long run. Like all intellectual property rights, the rights to geographical indications are enforced by the application of national legislation, typically in the court of law. Therefore, if there is a breach or you want to ask for an injunction or any other thing like that, you take it to a court of law. That is primarily the mode of enforcement. And that is the end of this presentation. Thank you very much for listening to our presentation on geographical indications. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Group 3. That was an incisive presentation, I must confess. I actually picked some tidbits from what you said. Thank you so much. Yeah, differentiation between geography. I've never even thought about it myself. Geographical indication and trademark. Thank you so much. Group 1, I hope you're ready to make your presentation. That was an incisive presentation. Thank you so much. So Group 1, you can go ahead and make your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you, Adako. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Group 1,
yes, we can hear you.
The topic is IP and traditional knowledge. So first off, we'll start with the content. We're talking about what is traditional knowledge and why to create traditional knowledge, the examples of traditional knowledge, international and regional instruments, the national strategy, existing international property, and challenges and recommendations. So what is traditional knowledge? I would like to say that we don't have a specific definition for traditional knowledge, that there's no specific definition that says it's traditional knowledge, but we can define traditional knowledge as a knowledge, know-how, skills, and practices developed and passed on from one generation to generation within our community. So I'm sure we all have a traditional knowledge from where we come from. Like if we go back to our village, you know, there's this particular knowledge. When your grandma cooks a delicious soup for you, there's something about it that makes it distinct. That makes that, so that's what like the traditional knowledge within that community. So we'll now go ahead and talk about that. Okay, traditional knowledge is largely unwritten and is not the proprietary right of a single individual. That is, a single individual cannot claim a proprietary right to a traditional knowledge. It's mainly for a community. So it can be found in a wide variety of contexts, such as the agricultural context, the technical context, the medicinal knowledge, also known as the pharmacognosis. So why do we protect traditional knowledge? First is to preserve cultural heritage, to prevent others from claiming IP rights, to prevent misappropriation, such as biopiracy in TK, then to endanger or to endanger innovation through the licensing of TK, to enable communities to control and benefit collectively from the commercial exploitation. So if we don't protect our traditional knowledge and someone comes along and like take our traditional knowledge, how do we benefit from it? So those are more reasons why we have to protect our traditional knowledge. So forms of protection for TK, we have patents, trademark, geographical indication, and trade secrets. So I'm going to give slight examples on traditional knowledge. Just like the indigenous traditional knowledge we mentioned earlier, folk and local knowledge, environmental knowledge, traditional ecological knowledge. So we move to national protection of traditional knowledge. How do we protect traditional knowledge? Because of the type of characteristics that attach traditional knowledge, most times the existing intellectual property rights might not be able to protect your TK properly. So it is advisable for each country to have their own national law which is going to protect the traditional knowledge. So how do we do this? Generally, national and regional laws that protect traditional knowledge have only a limited impact. And this is because we say intellectual property right is territorial in nature. So because it's territorial in nature, it is limited within a particular country. So that's why we need another one. That's why we need an international protection to protect it internationally. But let's stick with national protection for the meantime. Although in Nigeria, there is no national protection for traditional knowledge. Yes, we all know that. But when we go regionally, such like ARIPO have a Swakopmund protocol, which protects the ARIPO region for their traditional knowledge. Then when we said international protection of traditional knowledge, the current international system for protecting intellectual property was fashioned during the age of industrialization in the West and developed subsequently in the line with the perceived needs of technological advanced societies. However, in the recent years, indigenous people, local community, and governments, mainly in developing countries, have demanded equivalent protection for traditional knowledge system. So what we know before is the existing IP rights only protects our patents and all sorts, but they don't really extend to traditional knowledge. So this is the reason why we need a national strategy and international strategy to protect traditional knowledge. So when we come about traditional knowledge, we look at the current institutions, means of protection at their follow. We have the CBD, which is the Convention on Biological Diversity. We have the Nagoya Protocol, and we have the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. These three international protection, they actually look at the area of ABS, that's access and benefit sharing. They look at the area of PIC, prior informed consent, and they look at the area of MAT, that's what's MAT again? When I remember, I'll get back to that. Okay, then we look at national strategy for protecting TK. Okay, MAT is mutually agreed terms. Yeah. So national strategy. So how do we protect our TK? Since we don't have a national strategy in Nigeria, how do we go about it? So we have to borrow some of the procedures they use in international law to protect our national TK. Then we now say generally, national laws are the prime mechanism for achieving protection of TK and TCEs. However, where a jurisdiction lacks a national IP protect policy, where jurisdiction lacks a national IP policy, the following procedure may be implemented. First of all, we have to identify our TK and TCE and their interest holders. Then we have to like break down the objective. We have to know what exactly we want to protect. Why are we making these rules and regulations for TK? We also have to assess the existing IP system. Is it okay? Do we need to improve it, or should we leave it like that? If we need to improve it, then should we consider a sui generis system, that is a new system that's going to protect our traditional knowledge and include everything we need to include in it? With respect to sui generis system, we need to assess implementation means and cost. Other practical measures of protection of TK, we have to establish an enforcement measure or the protection of TK. Okay, if our TK is infringed, how do we enforce these things? We have to look at that. We have to look at documentation, because most times when we say our TK is infringed, we don't have that right to claim. We can't claim right to it because it's not documented. So in a case whereby we have a database where our TK is being documented, then we can now lay claim to that right that, okay, we have this documentation somewhere and we can refer back to it. We look at the protection, promoting institutional linkage and exchange of information. Then we look at capacity building, sensitization and awareness of creation. Most people are not aware of this protection of TK. So even when you go to them, because of their experiences they've had with other people, then we actually open up to us. Then we talk about the existing international property measures and systems that protect TK. We look at patents. Patent naturally does not, it doesn't protect the TK itself. It protects something like the generic strain that the plant has. I'll give an example of the Udia plant. The Udia plant is an appetite suppressant from South Africa in that particular area, in the region of San. So there was this biopiracy that happened, whereby the South African the council also they went ahead to register the Udia plant without involving the main people that owns that plant. So that way now there was no benefit sharing. There was nothing going back to the community itself. So the community itself was at loss, because only the African Council were benefiting from it. Meanwhile, the main community that owns that traditional knowledge, they have nothing to benefit from it. So we have to put all these things in place when we are talking about traditional knowledge. Look at the industrial design. If you look at our first page, there's a basket. That basket can be protected using industrial design. Trademark. The name of that community can actually be trademarked. The name of the product in that community can be trademarked. Trade secret. They have a trade secret to protect or to keep secret whatever it is they are doing in their community. Then we look at the challenges. What are the challenges we have here for traditional knowledge? Lack of instituted system of protection. This may be because the country have not identified any TK or TC to protect. Lack of recognition, cultural heritage, legislative orders. Their recommendation, we are going to recommend to adopt a comprehensive national policy on TK, strengthen existing legal tools and create new ones if it's needed. We should have a database or inventory for TK and TCEs, establish mechanism for access and technology transfer, and engage in sensitization and awareness creation to carry everybody along. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Group One, for the presentation. That was awesome. Thank you so much. I believe for those of us who have not really paid so much attention to GI, like myself, yeah, I'm picking certain interesting points from what you just presented. Thank you so much. I will go to Group Two now. Please, Group Two, I hope you are ready to make your presentation. Group Two, are you ready to make your presentation?
Yes, we are ready.
Okay, thank you. So please, you have the floor and you have 6 minutes.
Okay.
Please proceed to make your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Joy Johnny. I'm the presenter for Group 2, and we are presenting on the topic cultural expressions, also known as folklore. So I'll start by talking about our outline for presentation. Our outline, we're talking about what are cultural expressions, what is an example of cultural expressions, what are the characteristics of cultural expressions and intellectual property, then conclusion. So going by the definition of what cultural expressions are. Cultural expressions are expressions that result from the creativity of individuals. They result from the creativity of individual groups and society. This means that they are like expressions of folklore because they represent everything that identifies with the society. They express everything that identifies with the society and its roots of ancestors. They can be tangible or intangible. So I move on further to talk about what are the examples of cultural expression. The first example of cultural expression is that examples of cultural expressions are dance, name, designs and symbols, music, art, performances, ceremonies, architectural forms, handicraft and narratives. There are so many other examples, but generally the major examples are music, dance, designs, names, and art. There are more. Then move on to talk about what are the characteristics of cultural expressions. First, cultural expressions are transmitted. This means that they are transmitted from generations to generation. They are passed from generations to generations. Another characteristic is that they reflect the identity of the society. This just means that they reflect they reflect how the society is, they reflect the identity of the society. The third characteristic is that they do not have defined authors, unlike other intellectual properties like patents, inventions, and all that have defined ownership and authors. Cultural expressions don't have defined authors. The fourth characteristic is that they are tangible or intangible. They are tangible, meaning there are some kind of things you can touch. Then they are intangible, meaning there are some kind of things you cannot touch, just from the examples I gave above. The fifth characteristics of cultural expression is that they are always in development and never static. What does this mean? This means that they develop, like they are dynamic. They don't remain the same. They grow. They are dynamic. They just change. They develop. I move further to talk about cultural expression and intellectual property. Generally, we know that intellectual property serves as a kind of protection to the works of creatives. So in the same way, intellectual property serves as protection for cultural expression. How? Intellectual property law has proved to be a possible tool for the management and transmission of cultural heritage, protecting it from unauthorized use, reproduction, misappropriation, and other forms of illicit exploitation. Generally, intellectual property protects cultural expression from illicit exploitations, just as it does for other works of creatives. Intellectual property rights makes it possible to protect traditional cultural expressions through the registration of copyrights and related arts, geographical indications, designs of origins, trademark and designs. We all know what geographical indications are from what the last speaker explained. So generally, intellectual property protects cultural expressions, just like the copyright, trademarks, designs, and all. They protect cultural expression. confers exclusive property rights in order to allow the control of the commercial exploitation of traditional cultural expressions by the creators. This and establishes a moral protection of the same goods, avoiding their exploitation by third party and preventing unfair competition. What this generally is saying is that intellectual property protects cultural expressions from exploitation. It protects it from illicit exploitation by third party or an unfair competition. Indeed, cultural heritage not only has an undeniable artistic value, but also it carries an identity that surpasses its own creator and forms a common cultural model, favoring the recognition of a group that shares the same sense of belonging. To this extent, the intellectual property right that establishes a temporary property protection of cultural expression does not seem to be the most appropriate legal regime for the protection and preservation of traditional cultural expression. In our opinion, it is necessary to reflect on a single legal regime at the national level capable of responding to all the challenges that this issue encompasses. What this means is that there are so many issues related to the whole protection of intellectual property protection of cultural expressions. So we are asking for that to be like a kind of legal regime that encompasses all challenges and all. Then I move further to talk about the conclusion. Traditional cultural expressions, which is also known as folklore or cultural expressions, are integral to the cultural and social identities of the indigenous local authorities, embodying know-how and skill, and transmits core values and beliefs. Their protection is related to the promotion of creativity, enhanced cultural diversity, and the preservation of cultural heritage. This means that cultural expressions protect cultural heritage. A delicate balance must be found between protecting traditional cultural expressions and preserving the dynamic nature of culture, which requires interculturality, artistic freedom, and freedom of expression. So that is all from our end on our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joy. Very impressive presentation and excellent delivery. Yeah, I also picked the point that your group is canvassing for a single legal framework to protect traditional cultural expression. And I quite agree with you that we need, in Nigeria, we need a national legal framework to protect cultural expression, especially now that it seems like cultural expression has economic value. So it's, I think 10 years ago or 15 years ago, we might not know that there are economic values to even the name Yoruba and some cultural expressions. But now that we now understand that we have that insight that the economic value and there is it can be commercialized. I quite agree with you that we need a national legal framework to protect traditional cultural expression. Thank you so much for that presentation. I'll proceed to call on Group 4. Group 4, please, are you ready to make your presentation? Group 4? Please, you have the lead presenter for Group 4. Okay, I think Usman Sodiq, are you for Group 4?
Okay, yes.
Yeah, okay. For Group 4, right? Okay,
good evening.
Thank you.
For Group.
Yeah, good evening. Okay, Usman Sodiq, are you ready to make your presentation?
Yeah. I'll be sharing the screen and another person. I'll be sharing the screen and another person will be giving the presentation.
Okay, is the lead presenter on the call?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening, everyone.
Okay, good evening, Amaka. Good evening. All right, so you have the floor to make your presentation and you have 6 minutes, please. I would appeal to you to work within the time allotted to you. Thank you. Please, you have the floor.
Very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sanja Nwili and I'll be presenting Group 4 for the week. So our topic today is plant variety and then plant variety protection. Now, in the course of our discussion, so please, next slide. In the course of our discussion, we'll be looking at the introduction, like an overview of what plant variety means. Then we'll be looking at what plant variety and plant variety protection means, the requirement for plant variety protection, procedure for plant variety protection, the scope of rights under the plant variety protection, and then the benefits of plant variety protection. Then we'll be concluding. Next slide, please. Okay, so the agricultural sector in Nigeria contributes immensely to the economic growth in Nigeria. Sorry. And its resilient nature has transcended infrastructural neglect and inadequate regulation. Now, we would notice from subsistence agriculture to mechanized agriculture, we can tell that the agricultural sector has indeed contributed to the growth of the economic development of Nigeria. And one of the ways through which the agricultural sector contributes to economic growth is through plant breeding. Modern plant breeding and improved agricultural techniques have enabled impactful yields in the agricultural sector, which was previously not recorded. Now, there have been conversations and on developing countries keying into plant variety breedings and then establishing of regulatory and institutional framework that will support this plant breeding and protection of new varieties. In Nigeria, interestingly, in May 2021, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, assented to the Plant Variety Protection Act of 2021. Now, this act grants exclusive intellectual property rights to plant breeders over new plant varieties. New slide, please. Next slide. So, what is plant variety? A plant variety represents a more precisely defined group of plants selected from within a species with a common set of characteristics. Now, we know that there are a lot of farmers, and then a lot of farmers that grow different kinds of the same type of crop. Maybe you have farmer A growing a maize and farmer B growing maize. But then you find out that maybe, for example, farmer A discovers a special breed or special variety different from what farmer B has. Now, that's what plant variety means. So the scope of our discussion today is the protection or those rights, those intellectual property rights that accrue farmer A for being able to discover a special breed. So what plant variety protection means, or generally, is that it gives the breeder exclusive control over the varieties and then the right to use the variety, and also encourage development of better plant varieties. Next slide, please. So now, under what are the requirements for plant variety protection under the Plant Variety Protection Act? For a plant variety to enjoy protection, it must fulfill certain conditions, and they include conditions to be new, distinct, uniform, and stable. So I'll be briefly explaining what they mean. Now, for the condition of new, the novelty requirements will be met if at the date of filing, the propagating of harvested material of the variety has not been sold or disposed of with the breeder's consent in Nigeria earlier than 1 year before the date of filing, or 4 years elsewhere, or 6 years in the case of tree or vine. Now, the condition to be distinct, the plant variety must be clearly distinguishable from any other variety whose existence is a matter of common knowledge at the time of filing. It means that that special variety or that special maize seed that farmer A discovered must be different from what farmer B has, or from what farmer C has, or whatever type of seed that is in existence. Now, the third condition is uniformity. Now, the term is defined to mean sufficiently uniform in its relevant characteristics, taking account of variation that may be expected from the particular features of the varieties propagation. Now, the final one is stable. It means that the relevant characteristics must remain unchanged after repeated propagation, or in the case of a particular cycle of propagation at the end of each cycle. It means that whatever feature that farmer A discovered in when he discovered that special or that variety, it must be constant in every planting season for it to be gain this right that the Plant Variety Protection Act provides for. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is the procedure for plant variety protection? Now, the Plant Variety Protection Act provides a couple of things that should be done before that protection should be given to farmer A in our example. Now, the legislation sets out the following, like an application process. There's a need for denomination, i.e., that plant variety must have a specific generic name. And there's a place for priority rights of 12 years. Then there's a stage for objections. There may be objections with grounds such as lack of entitlement on the part of farmer A to file, or there's a material mispresentation or a failure to comply with the provisions of the act or regulation. The next point is the examination of the application, and finally, issuance of a certificate. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are the scope of rights under the Plant Variety Protection Act? Section 29, sub 1, paragraph A to G of the Plant Variety Protection Act 2021 provides for the following rights that can accrue to farmer A. Now, the right includes the plant variety right entitles the holder to prevent, it entitles farmer A to prevent unauthorized persons from production or reproduction, also known as multiplication, conditioning for the purpose of propagation, offering for sale, selling or other marketing, exporting, importing, stocking for any of the purposes that I mentioned above. Next slide, please. So what are the scope of rights under the Plant Variety Protection? Now, if farmer A goes ahead to register or gets the protection, so what's the scope of right? What are the things that he's supposed to enjoy, and what are those things that he's going to be limited to? Now, the plant variety also extends to any variety which is dependent on the protected variety. Now, dependent varieties are defined as those ones whose repeated production requires the repeated use of protected varieties, i.e. hybrids, or those which are essentially derived from the protected variety, which is not in itself essentially derived. Now, the Plant Variety Protection Act provides that right does not extend to the holder being able to prevent any acts done for private or non-commercial purposes or for experimental purposes. We should also know that these rights last for 20 years from the date of grant, except in the case of trees and vines, where it is 25 years from the date of grants. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits of plant variety protection? For farmer A, it offers legal protection as a reward for his investments. Now, okay, thank you. It offers legal protection as a reward for the investment the plant breeders make in breeding and developing new variety. So what it means is that for discovering that special maize, it offers legal protection for him, and then it gives the breeder exclusive control over the variety, and then it gives him the right to use the variety, and also encourages development of better plant varieties. It also leads to generation of foreign exchange and employment opportunities. Next slide, please. Okay, so conclusion now, the Plant Variety Protection legislation brings Nigeria intellectual property law further in line with international norms, and it will benefit both Nigerians and international companies. It will result in Nigeria becoming a member of the UPOV. It means International Union for Protection of New Variety of Plants. It will attract new investment into the country's seed investment, which is indeed a welcome development. We should know that before now, the absence of the PVP law in Nigeria led to a stealing of the IP, intellectual property rights of seed breeders. It means that a lot of people like farmer A in our example would have suffered a lot, their seed would have been stolen. There would have been a lot of, there was a lot of marketing of fake seed leading to low productivities for farmers and the loss of millions of naira on foreign exchange, on foreign export of seed. Now, according to experts, this has left many farmers with low quality and adulterated seed that present danger to crop production and food security. But the good news is that the PVP law, which has a development impact on food security and access to Nigeria, has been established in different African countries. So farmers can smile on with the impression that their seeds and their work doesn't go in vain, and their seeds and their hard work is protected. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Group 4, for the wonderful presentation and the brilliant delivery. Thank you for the enlightenment and the insights. Yeah, a lot to learn from your presentation. Thank you so much. So I'll quickly proceed due to paucity of time. I'll proceed to Group 5. So Group 5, please, are you on the call? Group 5? We have Group 5 on the call. Hello, Group 5. Okay, I think Taye is sharing a screen. So
yeah.
Group 5, Taye, right?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, Group 5, thank you. Please, you have the floor to make your presentation, and you have
Please give me
6 minutes.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Okay, I'll start now.
Okay, thank you. Please, you have just 6 minutes. You can proceed.
1 minute, I'm trying to share the slides.
All right. We'll just, well, you can proceed while you are also trying to share the slide. You can start your presentation. Pending the time you're able to share your screen.
Okay. Okay, can we see it now?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes.
You can proceed.
Okay,
you
so
thank you.
I'll be talking on the impact of AfCFTA on IP goods and services. Now, basically, AfCFTA is short for the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So basically, it's a project of the African Union's agenda that's set up to create the largest free trade area in the world with the capacity to lift 30 million people out of extreme poverty. Now, if you can see this slide, we can see the logo of AfCFTA and the motto, which is basically to create one African market. Now imagine having a large market where lots of people can actually trade in unison, various countries, international, not just domestic-wise, international-wise. And then there comes the need for intellectual property. Now the AfCFTA was actually, the agreement establishing AfCFTA was signed on 21st of March, but came into force on the 30th of May following deposit of instrument of ratification by 24 countries. This is an international agreement, so it's like different countries have to actually agree to it. Then trading under the AfCFTA agreement officially commenced on January 1, 2021, subject to negotiations on protocols and instruments of trade. Now, if we look at this diagram here, we have the AfCFTA scope that is basically for trading, for large marketing, and for reducing poverty. Now, the AfCFTA agreement seeks to boost Africa's economic output. It tries to ensure that everyone, poverty is actually eradicated. Now, the agreement has 3 different layers comprising of the agreement itself, the protocols and the annexes, the guidelines and the schedules, and it has 2 phases. Now, under phase 1, there's trading, good trading services and dispute settlement entered into force concurrently with the AfCFTA agreement. And this diagram shows the AfCFTA timeline, like how the negotiations actually started. The very first day they decided that, okay, let's create the AfCFTA. The meetings they went through, if you notice, started from January 2012 to June 2015, February 2016. And lots of other dates. So it didn't just, and from 2012, it was one that actually came into being. Then phase 2 negotiations were to vet the protocols on investment, intellectual property right, and competition policy. And this is where we're actually concerned about how the AfCFTA is concerned with intellectual property. Now, the AfCFTA has several opportunities, trade agreements, eradicating poverty, to create a single market, deepening the economic integration, establish a liberalized market through multiple rounds of negotiations. This is something between companies, between nations, between countries. It's not just domestic, international. So several countries have to come and sit down and say, okay, we actually want to have free trade within our country and other countries. And then they sign the agreement. This will enhance competitiveness, resolve challenges of multiple and overlapping memberships, and achieve sustainable and inclusive socioeconomic development. And then we have how AfCFTA can actually benefit African businesses by eradicating poverty, by creating job opportunities, by ensuring that there's a liberalized market and unity in all. So AfCFTA and IP rights feature prominently in the treaty establishing AfCFTA. So basically, in Article 4 of the AfCFTA agreement, it's established that one of the specific objectives of the agreement will be to make member states cooperate, among others, in the field of IP, like
Hello, Tai. Please, are you still on the call? I don't know. Hello, Tai. I think we lost her for some minutes. Please, is there another member of Group 5? Hello, Tai, if you're on the call, please, can you kindly respond? I think we've lost her. Please, do you have any other member of Group 5? Please, do you have any other member of Group 5 on the call? I think we've lost Tai for some minutes. So please, do you have any other member of Group 5, please?
There are other members present, but probably they are not I don't know, probably they don't want to continue with the presentation. So I guess that we can move to our mentors.
Okay, well, okay, in these circumstances, we'll definitely move to our mentors. Okay, I'll be calling on Mr. Sand to comment and also on the presentations. I'll be calling on Mr. Sand to comment on the presentation and also make his own his contributions. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Sand. Please, you have the floor, sir.
All right, thank you very much, Daniel. And I also want to say good evening to my fellow mentors and good evening, mentees. I consider this an honor to be able to listen in, especially when young people come together. I was talking to Ms. Imam this afternoon. I said, when young people decide to come to this part of that is boring, I see, and want to take up professional career or want to know more about it, it's always an exciting thing, especially knowledge. It's something that is lacking in the country. I say congratulations to the mentees for deciding to go through this process. Some of us have this privilege, and we've had to find our paths ourselves. And seeing this opportunity, I think you should not take it for granted. So first, I will start with the Group 3 that made a presentation on geographical indication. I believe you have done well in order to pull out the basic of what geographical indication. Geographical indication is one of those aspects of international party that is very technical in nature and as well as benefiting the rural community because it preserves the culture of the people and as well as ensure they get revenue from their culture and that which they have. You did mention Champagne. Champagne is a community in France. And because it's a community in France, the community has a unique way of preparing their wine, and they protected it, and it has become an economic value to them. No IP, no economic value is not sustainable. It's a waste of time. No IP, no economic value is a waste of time. Even when we talk about traditional knowledge, if we cannot get economic value from it, it is a waste of time. It is not going to be sustainable. Over time, it will fade away. And that is the challenge we are having as a country. If you go to, the mentee did mention about, group 3 did mention about the Ofada rice. Ofada community now does not plant Ofada rice because over the years, it has not become something of interest to the community. And it's important that when we look at this thing, we don't look at this from a theoretical perspective, we look at it from what exactly it will do for the community. I believe we have started well. We have to also build up on that. Nigeria is a member of the WTO, just to point out, but we have not ratified the TRIPS agreement, so it doesn't really hold water here. Some of the protocols that protect geographical indication in Nigeria, international protocol, we have not ratified. The Geneva Act, we are not a member. So it's a challenge. And because of that, even our trademark law, as you rightly pointed out, does not really recognize geographical indication because first thing first, geographical indication gives you right to a community name. Our trademark does not allow that. So the difference between trademark and geographical indication is collective, it's a community that owns it. Trademark, an individual can run with it. I say, thank you. You started well. I believe over time, those that have interest in geographical indication is a new area, especially in Nigeria and Africa, that you can grow your career on. But you have to spend time to really understand the technicality parts and as well as the commercial parts. So having said that, I hope the members of the group, I don't know how many members, I don't know, I was asking the coordinator of this why the different, who allotted the different groups, and she made me understand that it was allotted by the group, they allotted the topics to each of the groups. So, but if anyone, I believe anyone that is in this group, any of these groups should dig more into that. Spend more time with this area. This is a new area of knowledge, and it will benefit your career, not just now, but in the long run, and as well as the country. We have limited time, so I would really run through some of the stuff. I will talk about the traditional knowledge. Traditional knowledge is something that we also still does not have a lot of knowledge about. And we have not been able to harness the benefit inside. So traditional knowledge, it somehow works with geographical indication, and there is a connection even with the plant variety, which the president has rightly pointed out, the president has said it too. So these are areas that are new, that will need more work to be done. And if I may touch a little bit on, I believe I'll have more time to elaborate, just to give other mentors opportunity to talk on the AfCFTA. On IP, it's still ongoing. As a matter of fact, the negotiation on intellectual property has not really started, but it is something that we have to be careful about, because currently Africa is fragmented when it comes to IP. We have the two intergovernmental organizations. By the way, before I forget, Africa itself, African Union has what they call the Continental Strategy on Geographical Indication, which is started in 2018, and it's going to end in 2023, I think. Yeah, it's 2023, it's going to end. And it has like 3 objectives. One of the objectives is to harness the stakeholder network across the continent to be able to implement geographical indication at a national level. The second one is to preserving and promoting traditional products that are local to Africa or Nigeria, as it were. So we have a number of products that are local to us that are being misappropriated, either moved from here because nobody's following up. So African Union has a continental strategy that would protect this and position all these products for international market. So, you know, earlier when I talked about when IP does not have economic value, it's not sustainable. So if we can use our product and position it in international market as unique based on its characteristics that has to do with the soil and the climate, then will continue to be, the price will continue to be determined by some other people based on general commodity, using a general commodity framework, which of course is not going to benefit the rural community, it's not going to benefit the country, and it's not going to make the product sustainable. So let me just round up on this AfCFTA aspect. AfCFTA is a good thing for Africa, but we have to be careful ensuring that whatever projects, whatever framework agreement we are agreeing is benefit Africa, not use considering the. I'm happy that the representative from WIPO is in the house and he's one of the mentors. I think he will speak more on the WIPO framework and how that, which of course drives most intellectual property issues across the world. But I believe Africa itself has to design and define its pathway on intellectual property. And we have an opportunity with AfCFTA as we negotiate this process. And as mentees, develop more interest in AfCFTA, follow up what is going on in that circle, and as well as write about it and explore opportunities which will benefit your knowledge, will enrich your knowledge, and will also benefit your career. I think I will stop that for now. I will stop it here for now and allow other mentors to comment while I make my further intervention as we proceed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sand, for your incisive interventions. And thank you for the word of encouragement. I'm sure we're all taking notes for all the mentees and even past mentees that are here, myself inclusive. We're all taking notes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I'll proceed to call on Mr. Folarin to also make his comments and contribution. So, Mr. Folarin, sir, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you, Daniel. Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, depending on what part of the world you are in. Thank you for having me. It's been an interesting conversation, or an interesting series of conversations. I saw Mr. Rama earlier. I was hoping to just keep quiet and listen to him and perhaps Mr. Sand talk. So I'll just be taking notes. I have my notepad here and my pen. So I'm still waiting to take notes. But good stuff, guys. I understand you're working on a very short schedule, and you know it's a good idea to try and expose oneself to all these concepts, many of which are fast developing in real time today. And so I'll say well done in terms of scope of work. I'll say you guys are doing quite a lot, given the time and the amount of time that you have allocated towards preparing and researching the topics. These are topics that I think they're very deep, and there's a lot to be said about everything, and just as Mr. Sand said, it might be difficult one can't, within this short conversation, one can only scratch the surface. But I think just very quickly, I would end up at traditional cultural expressions and traditional knowledge, but I'll just comment on GIs. Yeah, there's a lot of potential for geographical indications in Africa for the exploitation, and particularly for the communities that have these, that house these geographical locations or that have built this reputation. So, for example, like Ikogosi, Gosi Water, Olumo Rock, and so on and so Zuma and so on and so forth. There's a lot of potential, and I think if you were to look at for me, I'll take it from a Nigerian perspective now. If you were to look at the exclusive and the concurrent legislative list, the question as to who owns or which arm of government or which level of government now is responsible for creating the laws, that would define or determine how GIs are exploited is very key. I had the opportunity when I was I'm still young, but some years ago I had the opportunity of registering a trademark that had a component of a GI, and again the opportunities that the communities can benefit from. So under some jurisdictions, or in some jurisdictions, the communities actually regulate how those words or the indications are used. So if, for example, a third party wanted to use a particular name like bourbon or like champagne, as was used in the example, or like Olumo or Gossi, like in the Kogosi waterfalls, you would have to apply to, some committee or a department in that particular community for a license, or what in Nigeria we call a letter of no objection, to use that term or that phrase or that word, and of course what that means is that there's a licensing regime that allows that community to benefit, at the local level, at least and then of course they can also introduce their own quality control mechanism and additional mechanisms that will ensure that their culture and their tradition, their heritage is also projected as well. Plant varieties, it's a very huge one. Breeders' rights, it's very huge. And from the conversations I've been having recently, I've had the privilege to speak with farmers from around the country recently, and it appears as though we might be having. I think we've been having agricultural issues. There has been food shortage in some parts of Nigeria owing to the insecurity, and then there was a shortfall in the rains this year. So this conversation around breeders and breeders' rights, is very key. I had the opportunity to speak with the head of an agency some weeks ago, and she said that they're currently completing a research paper on certain economic crops that we have in Nigeria that nobody knows about, but that are hugely, that are very beneficial both to the population in terms of access to food and feeding and food security, and also to the economy in terms of potential revenue that can be generated from using these food plants. But these are plants and food sources that nobody even thinks about, and many Nigerians don't even know about. And that's a huge. So the conversation around ensuring that the people breeders who take the effort to and do the research work to ensure that they can create strains of crops that are resilient or that can produce the best yields, for example, have some kind of protection, I think is very important. And I think that law, the act, is very important. I would like to see how it plays out in practice, because in Nigeria, making laws is not our problem. Our problem actually is in the implementation or in the enforcement of these laws. And I think having a conversation or starting a conversation around the PVPA is one step, is a very good step. And I think we should have more of these conversations going forward. Now, I know we talked about the AfCFTA. I have my thoughts, which are not necessarily mainstream, but I think Africa is Africa. There's a lot to be said, about Africa, both on a regional, as from the ECOWAS perspective, and then of course from the continental perspective, where all are different. All the different countries are at different points in terms of, economic development and technological development and so on and so forth. It would be good if we could figure out, a pathway towards harmonizing all these various concerns to ensure that we can have a system that speaks to the entire continent. It might be a little hasty to compare the EU to, or the arrangement in the EU to Africa, to the AfCFTA. or even NAFTA or any of the other regional or free trade agreements. But I do think that there's a lot to be said about Nigeria's preparedness, and by preparedness, one should talk about how prepared are we in terms of, we're talking about enforcement of intellectual property or the promotion of intellectual property rights. How prepared are we as a country, in terms of awareness of these rights? And then there's a lot more to be said. But I think in terms of the arts, I think Nigeria does dominate the space to a very large degree, at least within the Anglophone or the English-speaking parts of Africa. Our arts are out there, or our artists, sorry if I may say, are out there. And specifically within the arts, I'll be referring to music and maybe movies, the music and the movie industry. With regards to literary and perhaps the artistic sectors, so that's the visual arts, there's a lot to be said. There was a time when the literary community in Nigeria dominated the African landscape, or at least was very visible. I think there's a lot more that needs to be done in that space. So the big question of how ready are we as a country, or how prepared are we, from a point of view of general knowledge about IP, general awareness about IP, to actually make the best of the AfCFTA. Now, with regards to traditional knowledge and traditional cultural expressions, I found out that a lot of the conversations around this topic, TK and TCEs, is academic in nature. And yes, we can say that it's quite technical. I'd really love to hear Mr. Rama's perspective on this, especially from a historical point of view. But this conversation around culture, around appropriation without representation or without remittance, is a huge one. It's part of the global conversation, a global conversation that is going on at the moment. But I think that there's a lot. We have a lot. We have several channels through which, in Nigeria, for example, and I'll speak to Nigeria because I'm Nigerian and I'm in Nigeria. There are many opportunities to protect TCEs and TK, even though, yes, we recognize the fact that there's need for some kind of, legislative instrument at the local level, but we still have other means. And I'll refer now to traditional cultural expressions, particularly this, it was the Black Bones case, and I would say that I was very privileged to have participated in the prosecution of that case. And it had to do with, the case centers around the recognition of Bata, which is a traditional cultural expression of the Yoruba people of Southwest Nigeria, and how Bata music, Bata dance, gave birth to what we call, or is the progenitor of what we call salsa music, and salsa dance today, and it's interesting that in the salsa community globally, not just in Africa, or not just in Nigeria, but globally, there's that recognition that, Nigeria, the motherland of salsa, is actually in Nigeria, is in Africa, and is in Yoruba land. But locally, there's nobody. I mean, there's little or no recognition that is given to Bata. And when talking about traditional cultural expressions, it's important to situate those conversations within the practical and contemporary context. So we're not just talking about some leaves or flowers or poems in Kenya or in Mozambique. The other day, I had a conversation with some gentlemen who have resurrected the art called a martial art, Dambe. Dambe, from little research I did, is a martial art that dates back to, I think, the 9th century BCE. and it's a martial art, or it's a form of combat, that is used as a sport in areas that we refer to as northern Nigeria / Middle Belt, and these gentlemen they had a, what's it called? They both occupied blue collar positions. One was a founding partner or founding member of Jumia. The other one worked with Trace Africa as a production, was the production manager or something in Trace Africa. And they both resigned to promote Dambe. And today, Dambe Warriors, Dambe is, there's a movement. I understand that the Minister of Youth and Sports is taking efforts for the recognition of Dambe as a sport, as a sporting activity. They've grown this huge movement around Dambe, and this is the same Dambe, that I don't think many of us know anything about, but that perhaps maybe the people not some of the people in the communities where it is, where it originated from, may not even have any idea that, this sport is worth so much. But one of the things that I think I like that they are doing is they're also trying to see how they can situate the proceeds, from what the tournaments and the competitions, to send some of the people in those areas to school and provide, some kind of basic resources, if you may, like water and potable water, and other social amenities to the people in those communities. So I do agree that to a large extent, a lot of our cultural expressions are not written down. But then the question I'll ask is, who will bell the cat? Who will take the effort or take the steps to ensure that we document these things? And that was one of the things that led to the Bata case, because it was important to get a judicial pronouncement on the history or the trajectory or the exportation or exploitation of Bata dance and Bata music. So I think there's a huge potential for for exploitation, without necessarily waiting for the National Assembly to create, a bespoke legislation that addresses some of the challenges which are legitimate. So the question is, how do we use the traditional systems that we have today to exploit or explore, or protect these traditional cultural expressions? And I remember when we filed the suit, there was this huge argument. People would call me out of the blues to say, "Falari, this is intellectual property. Can you file this at a customary court? Isn't it the Federal High Court that has exclusive jurisdiction on intellectual property issues?" And I'll refer them to Section 251 of the Constitution, and say, "Okay, show me Section 251, I think number F or so, or number E." And it specifically relates to federal enactments relating to patents, trademarks, and so on and so forth. So, in the absence of federal enactments, are we saying that, or let's even put that argument aside, that it has to be a federal enactment? So let's say, are we saying that you cannot have, you can't have intellectual property that is regulated or governed by customary law, or by culture and tradition? Of course you can, and if you look at the Copyright Act does something to protect, what we call expressions of folklore, TCEs, in the sense of protecting the moral component. So ensuring that, okay, if you're going to use Shango, or if you're going to use, an individual or a story or a person, or any component of, any cultural story or cultural artifact, there should be some kind of what you may call, you have to apply to NCC, to the Nigerian Copyright Commission first for approval. That's on the one hand, but then there's a much deeper level, than that. There's a much deeper level. There are cultural expressions that can be exploited without, and nobody would even know that, oh, this originated from, one village in Karshi, somewhere in Nasarawa State. So I think there's, number one, with traditional knowledge and traditional cultural expressions, I would challenge the mentees to look for real life examples around you. You know, Gidigbo, I'm not sure if Gidigbo is still practiced in the Southeast or, well, in the Southwest, but Gidigbo was also wrestling, you know, was a form of traditional wrestling, or what you would call martial arts, that was practiced, you know, in Africa or in parts of pre-colonial Nigeria. You know, the question is, what has happened to that sport? You know, so I'll challenge mentees again to look for, you know, real life examples, because we can't be talking about culture and then when somebody asks, okay, give me an example of, you know, TK or a TCE, and we start scratching our heads of thinking, oh, there's a fruit somewhere in Kenya. If you eat the fruit, you know, you don't have to eat for 5 days. If you're talking about culture, what is culture? You know, you should look around you to say, okay, these are aspects of our culture, you know, that are worth something, that are valuable, you know, and that are worth protecting. And then we can start having conversations about them. I'll end with this anecdote. I read somewhere, you know, and I haven't verified the claim, but I've been looking for connections to confirm this, but that the black soap, which is, and I think I must have mentioned this here before, but what we call the black soap, or these are black native soap. I think Dudu Oshun uses that formulation, you know, but the black soap has been in existence for over 500 years, you know, and in fact, for several years. I'm just being modest with the 500-year term. But imagine that our people back then were able to come up with a caustic solution that could actually clean things, you know, or that could clean, you know, that could ensure that whatever you used it to wash, you know, was clean, you know, was properly cleaned and was germ-free to a large degree. You know, that's something worth celebrating. But then the question is, before Dudu Oshun, I remember, I think it was my grandmother, she would have that black soap in bowls. You know, but somebody decided that, you know what, let's take this, we'll modernize it, you know, and then we'll package it and we sell. So I think these are conversations that we should start having in terms of looking for examples around us, you know, that embody these TCEs and TK. So I know I've taken up a huge chunk of time. With that, I would just like to say well done once again. I look forward to next week's conversation without preempting the conversations that we'll have. But I'm hoping that we would have more time to dig deeper into some of these very interesting issues. Thank you very much. I see Mr. Rama is back. Let me pick my pen. Thanks a lot, Juliana. Well done, mentees.
Thank you so much, Mr. Polari. Thank you so much. It's always a joy listening to you, because there are also a lot of stuff to also note down. I was also writing and picking certain things when you're speaking, sir. So I would proceed to call on Professor Rama for his comments and contributions. It's a great privilege to have you on this call, sir.
Give me 1 minute.
Okay, so while we wait for Professor Rama for the 1 minute, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Max, Liz, and Regina. Thank you very much for joining us today. And we'll also like to hear from you later on. Thank you. So Mr. Rama, are you ready?
Okay, if Mr. Rama is not ready, let me just make a quick intervention with what Mr. Aluco just talked about. I think it's pertinent and very important for us to realize where we are as a country. You see, you talk about the black soap. It's true, this has been around for years. Even cocoa, you know, the iron pot that we use, if it's around, we can just stop. So why we are mentioning this is for the mentees to realize that this is not just theory, it's not just theoretical or paperwork. There are real issues with these things that will benefit and keep our culture, preserve it. That is the whole idea of, be it traditional knowledge, be it the plant variety, be it the geographical indication. It's about sustainability of who we are as a people. And we've not talked about the pattern expert. I think Mr. Rama, he's now ready. Let me just allow him.
No, that's okay. No, please continue. Can you hear me?
I think I don't want to eat into your time, sir. I think you can just go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Am I visible and audible?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. First of all, let me thank Madame Juliana Imam for calling me over to this, and for the introduction by Daniel Akunwali, and then rest of the speakers and the presenters. But they are not like mentees, the ones that I heard in the beginning. I'm sorry that I missed out all of them, but oh my, these people have done enormous work. They have put in their heart and soul. If you are listening to me, there is so-called mentees, each one of you, you have put in terms of your presentation, your heart and soul, and now I think you can mentor us now into intellectual property. I mean, I really highly appreciate all the PowerPoint presentations and the beautiful art to the PowerPoint. If I make a PowerPoint presentation, it looks like you don't want to see it again. But these ones that I saw, oh, I can just see the art instead of the letters. Now, turning to the subjects themselves, like the ones that I have, you have traditional knowledge, plant variety protections, TCEs, traditional cultural expressions, geographical indications, impact of AfCFTA. These are all like, first of all, to say that these are cutting edge sounds a bit weird. You're speaking of traditional knowledge as a cutting edge topic in intellectual property. I mean, it sounds like a contradiction in terms. Where is traditional and where is cutting edge? But that is what it is about. This is about no longer the intellectual property that has developed during the Industrial Revolution in England and came up up till 1995 to the TRIPS. To the TRIPS, how come you have in the TRIPS as geographical indications the Champagne, or even the Mont Blanc, or the Swiss watch? Why can't you have Houdaille cactus, which is perhaps been there perennially, much before the Scotch was invented in Scotland, much before Champagne was invented? So we are debating today in the 21st century, in 2021 in 21st century, as to what should be the geographical indications, what is the traditional knowledge, whether traditional knowledge is IP, etc. My friends, this is what that fell on us in WIPO, on the World Intellectual Property Organization, and all of us who are all active, socially conscious, development-oriented, intellectual property leaders and challengers of the past. That is what that has fallen upon us. And that's where, first of all, I want to congratulate JIIPC for taking up this great idea, the great mission, not idea. This is a mission what Madam Juliana Imam is running now. It's not just a technical mentor-menteeship. It is about the future of Africa, the future of developing countries, Asia, Africa, Latin America, and in terms of rewriting the intellectual property and application of its history to the contemporary realities. This is called, in a way, a subaltern approach. You might know, of all of us intellectuals from the developing countries should know, not intellectual property specialists, but as intellectuals, that colonialism had ripped off the national wealth and resources and sold the material back to these countries as markets. So the previous, once upon a time, erstwhile great cultures and civilizations have now become the markets. And they're not the exporters, they are the importers. That is where the intellectual property dissemination comes into picture at a very higher level. And now, turning to the specific aspects that we have been presented with today, the TK, the plant varieties, the TCEs, the GIs, and of course, the regional promotion of the African Organization Trade and Commodities. Well, I'm not getting into the trade, but purely because trade was not related to intellectual property, my friends. Historically, intellectual property was away and removed and was not connected at all to trade until WTO TRIPS came into existence. This is the first time trade was related to intellectual property. Before that, the trade was not. Before that, it was bilateral, it was national, it was regional in the context of Europe, but it is not like the Africa and the others, and Section 301 of the United States Trade Act, where if they think that their intellectual property is not respected, observed, then there would be trade sanctions from Washington. That was never there in history until 1995. Okay, now, traditional knowledge, I've seen, GIs and all that I heard, and I've seen the presentations. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, but what we are trying to do essentially is to apply the fundamentals, the fundamental attributes of TK, TCs, the fundamental principles of the variables of patents, trademarks, trade secrets, or geographical indications, whatever, appellations of origin, to the issues of geographical indication as such, geographical indication beyond the scotch and wines referred to in the article in TRIPS. There again, let me again underwrite another historical point is that there were no geographical indications for Scotch whiskey written into intellectual property until 1995. This is the first time. Before that, it was a French legislation. Okay, for the cheese, it was Italian. And there was a case between Italy and United Kingdom on cheese. Okay, now, but if it comes to Hudai cactus, nobody cares. Pfizer takes away Hudai cactus is from the tribes of Southern Africa in Kalahari Desert. And then that was taken by Pfizer. And that was given license, of course, by South Africa. It was taken and sold to the market for what? Sold to the market for obesity. The big, huge Americans in United States would buy that medicine, which is known for the sand tribes in the Kalahari Desert. That's life. That is intellectual property where we are as developing countries, as Africa and as Asia or as Latin America, is that we are trying to apply the fundamentals of non-obviousness, utility, and whatever that it is, the prior art kind of based patents, and see whether TK fits into that. TK does not fit into it because TK is not an individual innovation. It is not an innovation, and it is a community-based thing, and it has been there for immemorial time. You cannot put it for 20 years of the patents or 10 years registration of the trademarks or the GIs. It has been there for a long time. But then the other argument in WIPO, which is, as you all know, that WIPO has established a committee since 2000 for the last 21 years, just to look into these items of TK, TCE, TCEs, etc., which has been meeting on genetic resources, which covers the plant varieties subject. The committee IGC has been meeting for the last 20 years. There's been work going on. Now we are at the stage of text-based negotiations. And the last assembly of 2021 September, of course, this is headed by Mr. Wendland, and he was telling me that there is still not much happening. So therefore, there is a need today for us, apart from Nigeria's national legislation, or application of the existing legislation, or lack of any national legislation and national laws to deal with these subjects of the TKs, TCEs, plant varieties, and GIs in the developing countries in Africa, Asia, Latin America. But the work is going on in WIPO, but there is a need. What I heard from the last assemblies that we held 2 months back in WIPO is that there is a need for collaboration among the developing countries, where at least a handful of countries and diplomats should take lead to find what we want to get from out of TKs, that TK or TCEs or GIs or plant varieties should get the same protection internationally as others have gotten for Scotch whiskey, others have gotten for champagne, stuff like that. So this is where we are. We have to have national legislation, as our PowerPoint presenters have made, as what's happening in Nigeria and also the African thing. But then we have to have more internationally, because that is what the intellectual property related to goods and services under TRIPS and the WTO is that we send them back for a value. And we create innovative brains in our countries. We create not only out of course, out of what is our traditional knowledge, but we will also create an infrastructure, a human resource base of innovators. How come there is not a single apple in Nigeria? Apple means not the apple eating apple. This is the Apple commodity apple that we are using today, or the Google, or the Zoom. How come we don't produce one and export? How come they are produced in the Western countries and come to us? Or from China come to us? Why can't we export? That is innovation. That is technology. That is technology transfer. And intellectual property is a tool. Intellectual property is a tool of international trade for innovation, to promote innovation and to export goods and services abroad. And that is my mission for Africa. That is my mission that I want to add on to Madam Juliana Imam's dissemination of intellectual property in Africa. She is doing a mission. I would think that she should be awarded for what she is doing by each of our countries and by us as a whole and by the world as a whole. Therefore, I'm very fascinated. I can go on this for the next 2 hours, but I'm sorry that I had been in 3 other meetings. We have the International Law Commission election in the UN General Assembly going on as of now. And then I was on another Indigenous Justice Commission drafting a crimes treaty against the, for crimes against the indigenous people. And now this. So, and then I can go on, and I'm delighted that I have learned so much from the PowerPoint presentations made by these young friends from Africa. Each one of you, hug you and kisses, my friends. I have learned so much from your presentations. And there is, now in closing, let me say, I know I have spoken much more than what I am supposed to do, because I was scared that I might miss this opportunity of coming back. And thank God I told them the other meeting that I have to run for another meeting and came. Look, you have done great. All the PowerPoint presentations are excellent. But one thing that I had noted, that is what I tried to plug in, is that international approach was not much taken in, though I know that there has been a reference to CBD and Nagoya Protocol, etc. in one of the presentations. But there is, you should learn certainly bottoms up from what is happening in Nigeria and other African countries. But then you should also reach and see what is happening in WIPO and WTO, or what's happening in EU or United States, so that we get back to know how better we can shield, how better we can aggressively market our IP products and commodities and services. So that is why I was speaking about the Intergovernmental Committee, IGC of WIPO, or the assemblies of WIPO, and the WTO and TRIPS. I can go on at CBD and Nagoya Protocol and all that. I thank you all, and I want to offer my deep-hearted congratulations to each of the presenters for the hard work you do. My friends, this is the beginning. This is only the beginning. You guys will have to go a long way. You have to join the mission of Madam Juliana Imam, and you have to do your bit to disseminate and mentor intellectual property dissemination in Africa, and then develop our economies, and you be the leaders. Thank you, Madam Juliana. It's a great opportunity for me, and I apologize if I've spoken too much, because I'm very carried away, and I'm really, really impressed. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Rama. No, you didn't speak too much. In fact, would have loved to learn more. You know, take a lot of time. Even if you spend the entire night listening to you, I think it's actually worth it. Yeah, it's worth it. Thank you so much, sir. I actually took notes from what you said, and especially I concur with you that Mrs. Janella deserves an award. So perhaps you could help us talk to JIPP to give her an award. We wouldn't mind. You know, we wouldn't mind. Thank you so much, sir. I would proceed to the questions. We have questions from Group 4. The question is, what is the difference between stable and uniform under the requirements for plant variety protection? So I think any of the mentors can take that. The second question is TCE, and that's on traditional cultural expression, an aspect of traditional knowledge? And if it is, can copyright be used to protect traditional knowledge? So I would beckon on, I don't know if Professor Rama still has time. I don't know if you could address the first question, sir. The difference between stable and uniform under the requirements for plant variety protection. I don't know if
shall I go at it?
Yes, you can go ahead, sir.
Okay. So the question was the difference between distinct and stable, right? In plant varieties?
Difference between, yes, stable and uniform in plant variety protection.
Uniform. Okay. Okay. Well, the first one, distinct, is almost similar to what we have in the patent thing about new. The inventiveness, the novelty element of patent distinguishing features is what that is distinct with reference to plant variety protection. Now, look, you might know that plant variety protection was not, this is something I want to share with you all, is that plant variety protection was not bought, the concept was not bought by the developing countries initially. Even after the treaty came, the Plant Varieties Treaty, as you know that plant varieties is a different secretariat in the WIPO building. It is a WIPO organization, but it's a distinct organization. The WIPO Director General is also the Secretary General, Director General of Plant Varieties Organization, UPOF, Union for Plant Varieties Protection, but then that is distinct. Now, when the developing countries became parties to the WIPO treaties and became members, then we were like, I know the experience of India. India was a bit skeptical about the plant varieties. Why? You know what is the purpose of plant varieties protection? Was that this I'm sharing with you, my friends, confidentially. It's like Monsanto, for instance, the plant varieties company in United States. It does research. Maybe the agricultural researchers, they come from India and do it here. They get the green card and they get the citizenship in United States, and they do the agricultural research. And then do a variation from the existing seeds, and this becomes more productive. It's like earlier, if 1 quintal was sold, was kind of produced by a particular traditional seed, now Monsanto has worked on it, invented further, and put a chemical in that, and that becomes a seed, and then it is sold to India, and then the production becomes higher. Now that is called the so-called Green Revolution of 1950s in the agricultural sector, not the industrial, not the environmental green revolution of today. Now, this is what that was sought to be protected. What is sought to be protected in plant varieties is not the original seed. The other innovation, that is the distinct that is made, the new chemical that is injected into the seed, and that is called the distinct. And that should be uniform, and for which the Plant Varieties Treaty came into existence, and then the UPOV, Union for Plant Varieties Protection, came into existence. So therefore, these are the two attributes of distinct and stable, and these are also the debate in that. Now, I have seen that the PowerPoint presentation that is made here refers to the Nigerian law, and also refers to, how to export this back. Now, these are two things, my friends. What I'm going to say applies to traditional knowledge as well. There are two things in Africa, in Nigeria, or anywhere we can make use of intellectual property for traditional knowledge, traditional cultural expressions, plant varieties, or GIs. One is called the defensive protection. The second is called the positive protection. I'm sorry, I'm going back. I'm going beyond the question. The question is distinct and uniform. I have covered that already, but I'm going beyond that to apply it to the entire presentations. We in our countries can protect either traditional knowledge or traditional cultural expressions or geographical indications or plant varieties in two ways. Number one is defensive protection. Number two is positive protection. What is defensive protection? Defensive protection is one in which we want to make sure that the Hudai cactus is not taken away by Pfizer and sold in the Western market without any share to the original people who had used that cactus and walked in Kalahari Desert days and months just by using this cactus. They didn't have no food at all, but they walked through the desert, and they went from one country to another country, and they lived in huts outside, in tents outside, but what they ate was only this. And now the great scientist from Britain comes to South Africa and Tanzania and in the East African belt and says he did research and finds that the essence of Hudai cactus kills the hunger, but gives enough energy. And you can live with it. And that becomes a principle, and now made a tablet out of it, and that tablet is sold in dollars. Now, what I am saying here is, for us, we should be able to have a defensive protection so that nobody can patent it without us. That is the defense, without giving to us or without us being involved, others and outsiders should not. We should be able to defend our results and our products and our knowledge from the tinkling of so-called upscaling of the knowledge by outsiders. This is called the defensive protection. The second is what called? The second is the positive protection. The positive protection is for the plant varieties that they are there in Nigeria. You want to make sure that you start an industry for them, and you can innovate. You can get the plant variety protection for them, and then you export the market by showing the good qualities of it and the good trademark and label of it and the good GI label of it. That is positive protection. So these are the two ways. And sorry, again, I went up because I wanted to link up the distinction between these two. Though it is rooted in patents, but it is way beyond that to us for our benefits, how we can use it. Thanks, my friend. And second question.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the extensive insights. Thank you so much. It's actually enlightening. So I'll just quickly proceed to the second question. It's actually in the chat box. I don't know if Mr. Pan is still available and share his thoughts.
Let me see. I don't see. I don't know how to see the chat box. Okay, let me see. Okay.
Okay, I see.
Can I read it out? What is the difference between stable? Oh, that's over. Is TC is an aspect of TK? And if it is, can copyright be used to protect TK? Is that the question?
Yes, that's the question. TC is an aspect of TK. And if it is, can copyright be used to protect TK? That's the question, sir.
Is somebody else taking the question or should I take?
No, you can proceed, sir. You can.
Okay.
So
you can copyright be used to protect TK. Okay. Now, TCEs and TK. Essentially, let's see the difference between TK and TCEs fundamentally. The fundamental difference between TK and TCEs is that both of them are in a way together, combined. But at this, they are like what we call in law, joint and separate. They can be together, they may be together, but they can also be separate. They are separated to the extent that when we are referring to TK, my friends, please note, all our mentees, please note that when we refer to TK, we are referring to a knowledge, okay? We are referring, for instance, to how the artificial intelligence is now used in Tesla car so that the car goes on reverse parking. It can do it on its own. It's like the driverless driving. How is it done? It is engineering knowledge and application and artificial intelligence. Without the human body sitting there, the car takes computer algorithms, and those computer algorithms run the engineering parts. What is all this? I mean, I gave a very high kind of example. This essentially means these are all patented. What is there in patent? This is a knowledge. Is knowledge is something that we can touch? Is it like a drum that we can play? Or is it a flute that we can blow? No. Knowledge is something that is invisible, that is intangible. That is where you get patents. Okay? And you label them and sell them like this is the Gucci's some toy or tie, for instance. So this, what we are speaking is labeling of intangible knowledge as intellectual property. And this intangible property is as valuable or more valuable as the real property, the table, the computer, the building, the house, whatever. That is where the things come. Now, traditional knowledge is also like the patented knowledge of those cars or anything, or aeroplanes, or anything that we can speak of, or the computers, whatever. If that is the knowledge, our traditional knowledge is also like that, the same knowledge, okay? That is intangible. Now, how does it relate to TCEs? TCEs, it is related because it is also traditional, okay? The same grand old grandpa in my village who gives medicine for cough, fever, and whatever is also the guy who can play a drum in the evening in the center of the village. Now, the difference is the drum and the songs, the folklore and the dance and that hula hula, that is the cultural expression. Without the expression, the idea itself is not copyrightable. Without expression, mind you, without expression, the idea itself, the idea in your mind, you may have many. Your ideas might run into volumes, but unless you show the volumes, unless you show the music, unless you show the drum, your mind is not copyrighted, my friend. You might have abstract idea. A plus b whole square is equal to a square plus b square plus 2ab. But then show me how does it apply to a water bottle, and then we'll show that if you sing a song and if the table moves, then that is cultural expression. So therefore, traditional knowledge and traditional cultural expression are two different things. Vaguely speaking, because we are all pundits of intellectual property, traditional knowledge is something alien to, something akin to patents, and traditional cultural expressions is something akin to copyrights. Whether you want to copyright a car, no. You want to patent the engine? Yes. Do you want to patent a song? No. You want to copyright the song, music? Yes. Bollywood, Nollywood, Hollywood, we are all on the same page. And those are all the music, the Bollywood, Nollywood, Hollywood music is all what? It's all copyright expressions. Because it is the expression, that is why it's, because otherwise we used to call it as folklore. Now, to bring it much closer to cultural copyright, we called it cultural expressions. And because it is traditional, it is not modern, it has been there forever, the same song. We want to defend it so that others don't take away. That's why we call it as our Nigerian traditional cultural expression, our songs, our drums, our traditional knowledge. Yes, we want to protect, not by copyright. We will also fight with you on patents and trademarks and trade secrets. We can keep that knowledge as a trade secret or as a geographical indication or whatever that is, or as patent, but we'll keep it there. That is the correlation between TCEs and the TK. And that is where copyright comes in or does not come in. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving an in-depth analysis. Of the questions. Yeah. So someone just commented in the chat and said, "Wow, I even took hours and understatement." You broke it down. You were down to earth in answer the question. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's a privilege to have you here. To have you here speak to us and to learn from your wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for honoring the invitation to be here. Thank you so much. I think we have other mentors here, and I don't know if they want to just quickly, in some seconds, just share their thoughts, just give us some contributions on the conversation.
Okay. Mr. Sand wants to say something.
Okay, Mr. Sand, let's start.
Okay, just a quick one. Thank you very much for fantastic job you are doing, Daniel Akinwale. And I must commend also Professor Rama. I missed some of part of the stuff. I'm still in the office though, so I will just I'm doing rounding up the week's work. So I'm reading through the question. The question says, what is the difference between TCEs and an aspect of traditional knowledge? And so, okay, traditional cultural expression, copyright, traditional knowledge. So traditional cultural expression is historic, is a community that owns it. Most times it's beyond one person. So what we ask, in our place, in African culture, we ask you, who are you to make certain statement, or who are you to use certain phrase? Because it is a generational thing. So if you want to copyright it, how do you copyright it? Traditional knowledge is a process. For example, if I use like Ijebu Gari, there is a process. Ijebu Gari prepares their Gari. It ferments it for 3 days. It takes it out from the bag. It puts it from certain place. That is a traditional knowledge. So it has been handed over from generation to generation. So who are you to then copyright that traditional knowledge if the community has not given? So these are intellectual property assets of a community. I'm sorry, I didn't know my camera was not on. These are intellectual
Yeah.
property assets of a commodity, of a community. So if you want to protect it, where will the revenue go to? That is one thing. And it's also a difficult thing for policy influencers like us, policymakers, to be able to define these things and put it into situations. So I think even WIPO is still struggling with this aspect of knowledge. So that's why over the years, there's this symposium engaging to understand how really to be able to position traditional cultural expression, because it's not an individual thing. Most times it's not written, but there is an aspect where we can be able to also protect. I'm saying protecting it is not for an individual benefit, but for the community. So, for example, pattern. If you see some African pattern where you write certain Y a certain way, it has been around for years. So if you are protecting that pattern, you can't protect as an individual, you're protecting for the community, and the community has to guide you. So the custodian of that process, that pattern, has to be maybe the traditional head. But how do the traditional, when it's not even written anywhere? It's a complex issue. But at the same time, I think we are getting there. I think having conversation in this area, because again, traditional cultural expression also changes with time. I don't know. I think I heard Prof talking about the AI of these days. Artificial intelligence is coming up. So it's part of artificial intelligence as a whole cannot be protected, but an aspect of that can be protected for an individual. But it's like Internet of Things. Who owns internet? Because internet is an intellectual property of somewhere, but it's a community thing now. But an aspect of it, maybe the mark, you protect it for yourself because it came from you. The other aspect, so you can't copyright. Just in summary, though, an individual cannot copyright traditional cultural expression or traditional knowledge because it's not an individual idea. It's a generational idea. It's a generational concept. So what an individual can do is to maybe use one pattern, add value to it. If you remember, I don't know if any of you have seen this capsule of saying bitter leaves. Okay, so Prof, there is what they call bitter leaf. Bitter leaf is a leaf used in preparing soup in Africa, in Nigeria. So and to be specific, in Southeast Nigeria. But there is a company in US that has come to take that bitter leaf and put it in capsule. The company is not deferring to the community that owns it. So that is wrong. That community owns it. So whatever company, so somehow we have to protect, put a legal framework to protect all these are customers. Like dongoyaro. Dongoyaro is a leaf that mostly grown in the north. Or guro tula. Guro tula is what helps men in productivity, in sexual, stuff for married people. You understand? But it's a pharmaceutical product. So pharmacists come here because they discover they take it out, but the cultural people that owns it are not benefiting from it. They know how to process. So people come to steal our idea and they take it out. So what we should do is for us to be able to organize the community. And I'm talking about everybody in this call because it's not a one-man thing. It's everybody. Identify these processes through traditional knowledge in your community. Educate people to understand the value and see how you can support them to even start protecting it, not just to give it away as a general commodity. I don't know if I'm communicating, but for just to be clear again, an individual cannot copyright traditional cultural expression, nor traditional knowledge. It is an asset of the community because it's handed over from generation and it keeps on evolving into generation to generation. But however, you can benefit from it. It's like drinking from a river. You drink your part, but don't come and say you want to own all the river. It's not possible. No, the people will not allow you because you will just be fighting people from right to left. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the intervention. Yeah, it's actually and a very wonderful insight. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. I also ensured I also noted down some points. Thank you so much. So I would proceed to call on Mr. Folarin to also share his thoughts on the question. I think we actually need to keep this conversation going. I mean, it's something we have to keep scratching and scratching. Well, thank you so much, sir. So I would call on Mr. Folarin to also share his thoughts and his insights with us on this question. You're muted.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kimali. I don't know if I can add anything again, but yeah, I think, and I should say a big thank you to both Sand and Professor Rama for covering the field. I think there's a lot to be said about, again, contextualizing these concepts, in real life, in real time, and perhaps even situating it in, well, as part of cutting edge, or as part of, or infusing it into contemporary technology, or in the contemporary times that we live in. So, I mean, dongoyaro, bitter leaf, and to think that there are so many other processes, by which I think about I'm from Southwest Nigeria. I'm from Ilesha, which is a town in Osun State. And in Ilesha, we have, well, in many parts of Nigeria, at least in the Southwest, you have these people they call babalawos. In contemporary, in Nollywood, or at least in the movies and in the media, they have been portrayed as fetish individuals who conjure spirits, and all that, and deal in voodoo. But in reality, Babalawo it means Baba Alao. So it's a medicine man, if you may, and quite unfortunately, because many of these processes, were handed down from father to son, or from, within a lineage, or from mother to daughter, they were lost and not written. They have been lost, and some of them were in the process of losing them, in real time. So I think that there is a lot to be said about having these conversations, taking them mainstream, and even engaging with people in those spaces. I remember I received a few months ago, I received an email from a Babalao, who sent me, I think he had read about the Bata judgment somewhere, and he sent an email. Somehow he got my email somehow, and he sent me an email saying, I want more Odua. So, this and this, and was saying, oh, thank you, that we should have some kind of conversation around, what they do. And I think it's very important to have that, to at least to start reimagining or retelling our stories, or retelling the stories of our culture, so that we don't lose our culture in the process, and lose the actual benefits. I remember in the course of the case, one of the judges said, there was a judge who asked a question and said, why do we have to recognize our culture by referencing it to another culture? So we're saying we're trying to recognize Bata, but we have to make a reference to salsa in order to say, oh, Bata is valuable. And my answer was that, something must lead to another thing, and yes, Bata has its place in history, but today salsa is where it is. But then we should be able to draw the line back to say, this is the point of origin, this is the source, this is the root, and as such, those who are from that place should be proud enough, to about their heritage, and should understand their heritage, because that gives them a place in time, a place in history. So again, I would say fantastic conversation. I do agree with everything that both Sand and Professor Rama have said. I don't know if Max is still here. I would really like to hear his perspective too. But thank you very much for the opportunity, Juliana. Well done. I'm part of very happy to be part of the movement. Since Prof has christened this to be a movement, so I'm very happy to be part of the movement.
Thank you so much, sir. I think Mr. Max is on the call, so I'll just proceed to call him for him to share his thoughts with us. So, Mr. Mark, please can you share your thoughts with us, sir? Okay, speaking.
Okay. Yeah, good evening, Daniel, and good evening, everyone else. Of course, Juliana, Professor Rama, my chairman, Sand, and of course, Mr. Aluco. I mean, after having heard what everyone has said, honestly, I really don't think I have anything else to add. But just to say, I've really enjoyed the conversations. I mean, I know for the mentees, it might not be exactly easy because we are talking of some of the really high level stuff of IP here, you know, and getting to some of the deeper dimensions of IP. But there's something Professor Rama said, which I fully agree with, is that when we talk about this, the things we are talking about today, the implications they have, you know, are more global and international than domestic. Because if you have a good regime for, you know, protecting geographic indications, traditional knowledge, traditional cultural expressions, and all, you are really bringing a benefit that is beyond just enterprise level benefit. You are looking at benefiting the whole society, the whole, you know, local communities and all. So it's a little bit deeper, and I think we should be challenged as IP professionals or aspiring IP professionals to focus on some of these areas if we truly want to make the lot of our people, you know, in Africa and in Nigeria better. You know, if you do a trademark and all, it's fine and good, but it will benefit maybe one company. You do a copyright, it benefits one artist. You do a patent, it benefits one professor, one inventor. But if you're able to get, you know, it right on traditional cultural expression, for instance, I mean, a whole community that is already living below the poverty line could be lifted up out of the, you know, out of poverty. So I just want to encourage us not to. I mean, it can be quite burdensome. It's not easy. Even myself, when I read about TK, TCs, GR, and the rest, it can be quite, and it's not what brings money. That's if we are going to be sincere. I mean, I've been in the field for a while. There's just one case I think I've done. I made some money from traditional cultural expression. You know, but I mean, if it was trademarks, it's something you make money, you know, next week. If it was a patent, copyright, and all. But if in the long run we are able to strengthen ourselves. So at the moment, for instance, I'm working with the Chieftaincy Council in my place in Benue because we spotted a program on digital TV that actually depicts the culture of my place, you know. And I spoke to someone high up in the community's chieftaincy structure and said, look, have you guys watched this program? It's trying to depict our culture. And even though it's not done bad, but we have to be careful to control what is being put out there about our culture. Okay, let me give you a practical example because I'm from Benue State. And one part of Benue State, which is not where exactly I'm from, but the other part of Benue State. Now, somebody had a case go to court in 1978 or 79. Now, what was that case? It was a case of a civil law case of enticement and harboring. The man's case was simple. You enticed my wife, you made her leave my house, and you've harbored her in your house, which is a simple case. Now, the defense that the man brought was to say, look, in this area, in our area, enticing and harboring a person's wife is not a bad thing. After all, customarily, when visitors come to visit you in this area of, you know, the country, part of hospitality is to give them one of your wives as, you know, as part of the entertainment. Now, that simple statement, which was not true, by the way, was blown out of proportion until today. Everybody's laughing because you already know the part of the country I'm referring to. Now, that one thing that somebody said has now labeled a whole ethnic group with, you know, this very negative connotation. So, which is why I was telling our people that, look, we have to watch this movie. There is a series actually on DSTV, but you have to be careful that you don't allow them portray your culture in the wrong. So you have to have some level of control. We know they have artistic control, you know, and their copyright in that program, but you have to be sure that they're not putting out anything there about your customs that will be negative, you know, ultimately. So it's, like I said, it's very painful work. I mean, you are doing that work, there's no hope of getting paid, you know, as well. But if you're able to do that work and do it properly, then, you know, the benefits is beyond just the immediate pay to you as a practitioner, but there's a larger societal benefit to it. So I know I've not exactly addressed what you called me to address. I just thought to encourage us to not to really pay attention to these things. They are crucially important for us in the developing world if we really want to bring our people out of poverty, and bring our people, to a place where they can truly benefit from what, they are, from generations past, we have labored, nurtured in terms of within our cultures and our societies. So thank you very much, and sorry for taking more than well beyond my allotted slot. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. It's always exciting for us to always visit you. Thank you for your thoughts, and thank you for the dimension you actually brought in this. Yeah, you actually shared your insights. Thank you so much, sir. So I think we also have Mrs. Regina on the call. I don't know if you can briefly listen to our comments and our intervention, our take on the conversation thus far.
Hello, Daniel. This is Regina. I believe that all the speakers have said a lot. Thank you, Mr. San. Thank you, Professor Rama. Thank you, Juliana. It's really overflowed in the case if I add more to it. Thank you all. I've really learned a lot, and I believe that the mentees have also learned. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Ms. Regina. So I believe we've actually, I believe the mentees, both past and present, current mentees on this call have learned a lot, and we have a lot of take home from this conversation, and definitely we'll have to go back, make a lot of research, and dig deeper, just as our mentors have encouraged us, admonished us. I believe we'll have greater benefits in the long run if we keep the conversation going. Thank you so much. I don't know if Mrs. Juliana would have.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you for an amazing moderation. You have actually done so well doing this today. And I would like to say a very big thank you to Professor Rama, to Mr. Sand, Mr. Folarin, Mr. Marks, and Mrs. Regina. The passion with which we are talking about this is what everything needs, because if you're not passionate about what you're talking about, then people will not take what you're saying seriously. So the fact that everybody is bringing passion to the table and knowledge, so we're not just talking with passion, and no, this is passion plus knowledge, and this is what we need. And I'm excited about this, and I thank God that we've come to this point. So I'd like to thank all the mentors. I would like to thank the moderator and the mentees that have been here. Thank you, Esohe, Usman, Jude, Amosa, Efome, Bumi, Gabriel. Where are you? Deborah. If I missed your name, I'm so sorry, but thank you so much for staying. We are going to be rounding this up upper week. So we'll be having our closing ceremony upper week, but next week we'll be talking about sports law. So I'm excited about it. After next week, then we'll round up upper week. So thank you very much. And please know that you have Professor Rama here. He has also signed up for the private mentorship for 30 minutes one-on-one. Mr. Folarin has said yes orally, but he has not filled the link. Mr. Marks has already said yes also. So, and after this call, I'll be sending it also to Mr. Sand. So these are people that are amazing at what they do, and they've said that they are ready to also give us 30 minutes private mentorship where you can ask any question. So please let us take advantage of this. Thank you very much, everyone. Have an amazing weekend. Thank you, Professor Rama. Thank you, Mr. San. Thank you, Mr. Folarin. Thank you, Mr. Marks. Thank you, Regina. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.